The Bible reading this morning is taken from Daniel chapter 10, verses 1 to chapter 11 of Daniel, verse 2a, then chapter 11, verses 29 to 35, and then chapter 12, 1 to 13. This can be found on the Church Bibles, pages 896 to 900. In the third year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belshazzar. Its message was true, and it concerned a great war. The understanding of the message came to him in a vision. At that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips, and I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. On the 24th day of the first month, as I was standing on the bank of the great river, the Tigris, I looked up, and there before me was a man dressed in linen, with a belt of fine gold from Uphaz around his waist. His body was like topaz, his face like lightning, his eyes like flaming torches, his arms and legs like the gleam of burnished bronze, and his voice the sound of a multitude. Daniel was the only one who saw the vision. Those who were with me did not see it, but such terror overwhelmed them that they fled and hid themselves. So I was left alone, gazing at this great vision. I had no strength left, my face turned deathly pale, and I was helpless. Then I heard him speaking, and as I listened to him, I fell into a deep sleep, my face to the ground. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, "Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I am about to speak to you, and stand up, for I have now been sent to you." And when he said this to me, I stood up trembling. Then he continued, "Do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day that you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard, and I have come in response to them. But the prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, because I was detained there with the king of Persia. Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come." While he was saying this to me, I bowed with my face towards the ground and was speechless. Then one who looked like a man touched my lips, and I opened my mouth and began to speak. I said to the one standing before me, "I am overcome with anguish because of the vision, my Lord, and I feel very weak. How can I, your servant, talk with you, my Lord? My strength is gone, and I can hardly breathe." Again, the one who looked like a man touched me and gave me strength. "Do not be afraid. You are highly esteemed," he said. "Peace. Be strong now. Be strong." When he spoke to me, I was strengthened and said, "Speak, my Lord, since you have given me strength." So he said, "Do you know why I have come to you? Soon I will return to fight against the prince of Persia. And when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first I will tell you what is written in the book of truth. No one supports me against them except Michael, your prince. And in the first year of Darius the Mede, I took my stand to support and protect him. Now then, I tell you the truth. At the appointed time, he will invade the south again. But this time, the outcome will be different from what it was before. Ships of the western coastlands will oppose him, and he will lose heart. Then he will turn back and vent his fury against the Holy Covenant. He will return and show favour to those who forsake the Holy Covenant. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who have violated the covenant. But the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. When they fall, they will receive a little help, and many who are not sincere will join them. Some of the wise will stumble so that they may be refined, purified and made spotless until the time of the end, for it will still come at the appointed time. Chapter 12. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found written in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake, some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. But you, Daniel, roll up and seal the words of the scroll until the time of the end. Many will go here and there to increase knowledge. Then I, Daniel, looked, and there before me stood two others, one on this bank of the river and one on the opposite bank. One of them said to the man, clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, "How long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled?" The man, clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left hand towards heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, "It will be for a time, times and half a time, when the power of the holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed." I heard, but I did not understand, so I asked, "My Lord, what will the outcome of all this be?" He replied, "Go your way, Daniel, because the words are rolled up and sealed until the time of the end. Many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand, but those who are wise will understand. From the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. As for you, go your way till the end. You will rest, and then at the end of the days you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance.
Fantastic, thank you, Jill. I feel like that's all fairly clear. Should we just go for coffee? I'm Nathan, if we haven't met, one of the pastors here. And do keep your Bibles open. I feel like we're going to need those this morning, aren't we? Look, as we start, I just want to start by making an observation, which is that if you're a Christian and you're living in the UK today, there's a basic assumption about you by most people, which is that you are misguided. Okay? In fact, more than that, you're either to be pitied for wasting your life on taking this whole religion thing so seriously, or you're to be opposed for just taking it really quite too seriously. Now, opposition to those who trust in Jesus, it's not usually too extreme in this country. The waves that kind of wash against us, they're not too severe. But it can sometimes feel like the tide is just against us. You know, if we have a personal belief in a God who raised a man from the dead, who we can speak to and listen to, well, it just feels like everyone's slightly against that. I'm also aware, though, that there are some sitting in this room who will have friends and family, people they love, in other countries, as Andrew prayed earlier, for whom the waves that crash against them are devastating. Some of those who we love, they're denied access to work, they're denied the freedom to worship, they couldn't meet like this, they're attacked, they're even killed. And that's been the reality for Christians down the centuries and around the world. We've been talking about that kind of dynamic, opposition to Christians, for a number of weeks now, if you've been with us, because we've been in the book of Daniel together. And Daniel, you see, he was one of God's people, like us, living away from his home with God. He'd lived in Israel, in Jerusalem, and Babylon had come and they'd captured him, they'd taken him exile, and they'd taken them out into this place, Babylon, where the basic working assumption was the same, that the God of the Bible was dead and irrelevant, not one to worship. In fact, to be opposed. Okay, Daniel's the book, therefore, that calls us as Christians facing opposition to stand firm, faithful to our God in a world where it doesn't look like that makes sense. We're in the final chapters of that book today. I wonder if you got a sense of that kind of call to stand firm as we were reading it through. Kind of standing firm in difficulty. Did you notice all the language about standing? Stand up. I took my stand. Strengthen to stand. You will stand. Okay. As the book of Daniel comes to an end, the call is to stand, to remain faithful to God. Just look with me. Grab your Bibles. Page 896 and Daniel chapter 10, verse 1. Okay. In the 3rd year of Cyrus, king of Persia, a revelation was given to Daniel, who was called Belteshazzar. His message was true, and it concerned a great war. Daniel 10, it starts with a revelation now about a great war. Okay, war. Whatever comes next is not going to be easy, is it? Imagine with me a play, okay? Here we go. Imagine with me a play. And you're taken up on the stage in front of the curtain, and you're told you're going to get beaten up. Okay, now most of us at this point are feeling a little bit kind of, concerned about this. Well, so was Daniel, right? Verse 2, at that time, I, Daniel, mourned for 3 weeks. I ate no choice food, no meat or wine touched my lips. I used no lotions at all until the 3 weeks were over. Okay, no steak and ale pie, no popping down to the pub, no cocktails with the girls. He's mourning at this war, right? He doesn't even do his makeup. There's no skincare routine for 3 weeks. Goodness me. Some of us, that's like, whoa. Okay, what is revealed to him is terrible, isn't it? It's really terrible. And so if he's going to stand, well, he needs to understand. What's going on? Verse 1, the understanding of the message came to him in a vision. Okay, this is the big thing we're going to see in all 3 chapters. When life gets really hard as one of God's people, if you're going to stand faithful to God, you need to understand. If you get put on a platform and you get told you're about to get beaten up, you need to understand what on earth is going on. Why would I stay here and do this? Okay, here's the 3 things Daniel and all of God's people will need to understand. Okay, firstly, is to understand spiritual reality. And the understanding of the message, it comes to Daniel in a vision. And what Daniel sees in this vision is the spiritual reality behind human history. Okay, verse 4 to 6, he sees a man dressed in linen, like the priests of God who used to serve God in the temple. But this man is no ordinary man, is he? He's wearing a belt of fine gold like a king. His body is like a gemstone of topaz. His face is like lightning. His eyes are like flaming torches. His arms and his legs are like burnished bronze. And when he speaks, it just sounds like an entire stadium full of people is shouting it. It sounds like you're at the World Cup. Okay, this is no ordinary man. These descriptions, they're kind of godlike in their characteristic and proportion, aren't they? This is some kind of heavenly, spiritual man. And the point is, he's terrifying. Did you get that as we read it? You see, Daniel alone sees him, but verse 7, such terror overwhelmed those who were with Daniel, who didn't even see him, that they fled and hid themselves. Verse 8, Daniel says, I had no strength left. My face turned deathly pale. I was helpless. Okay, you're standing on this stage. Get ready for the punches. Here they come. And then someone just draws back the curtain a little bit. And you get a little glimpse of what's behind. And you see someone like this standing right behind you, behind the curtain. And you're terrified. You've completely forgotten about the fact you were going to get beaten up at this point, okay? This man, he is of like unearthly, terrifying proportions. That's Daniel's experience. And then it turns out that this man has come not to scare him, but to help him. Verse 10, a hand touched me, set me trembling on my hands and knees. He said, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, consider carefully the words I'm about to speak to you and stand up, for I've now been sent to you. And when he said this to me, I stood up, trembling. Okay, this terrifying figure has been sent by God for Daniel. He's been sent because Daniel is highly esteemed. He's loved by God. He's been sent to help Daniel stand. Verse 12, he continued, do not be afraid, Daniel. Since the first day you set your mind to gain understanding and to humble yourself before God, your words were heard, and I've come in response to them. Okay, Daniel is one of God's humble people facing a fight because he's one of God's people. And this mighty man has been sent to strengthen him, to tell him not to fear. You see, Daniel, he's been praying for 3 weeks, mourning for 3 weeks, and he's been heard. And this man's come to give him understanding. Okay, the first thing Daniel needs to understand, if he's going to stand, is that behind this world's curtain, there is a bigger reality. There's a spiritual reality. God is real. His heavenly servants, angels, other beings, they're real. And as one of God's people, that means Daniel's prayers are heard. He's cared about. These spiritual behemoths, giants, they're on his side, or rather, he's on their side. Because in verse 13, we find out there's some sort of spiritual battle raging, isn't there? Daniel's war is part of something bigger. Take a look. The prince of the Persian kingdom resisted me 21 days, this man says. Then Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me because I was detained there with the king of Persia. It turns out Daniel's prayer took 3 weeks to get an answer to, not because God didn't want to answer, but because of what was going on behind the curtain. Now, that's all the detail we get, okay? The point isn't we get too kind of caught up with like, oh, who was fighting who, what's going on, where are the princes? The point is the great war that Daniel himself is about to face, that he sees this vision of, is part of something bigger. And he's loved, and he's on the side of the God of the universe and all these mighty spiritual powers. And the same is true for us today. Okay, as the curtain is drawn back a little on the stage for us this morning, this is what's happening. We get a peek behind the curtain. We see that there's more going on in the fight that we face. The battle is part of a cosmic reality. It's a part of a cosmic play, as you were, and in this play, God's humble people, they stand on the side of the Almighty and his heavenly beings. Look, in the book of Revelation, Jesus himself is described. And he's described like this man. It matches it almost exactly. We stand on the side of the King of heaven seated on the throne of the universe. In Chelmsford today, the idea that there's a spiritual realm, that might just seem ridiculous. Maybe this is new to us, and we're thinking, really? I've never seen that. But when you look around the world and you actually look back through history, I did a quick bit of Googling this week, and the best estimate seems to be that over 99% of people who have ever lived assumed that there was more than just what you can see and touch in this world. To think that we are just simply better educated as modern people and more enlightened than everyone else around the world is just arrogant, isn't it? God shows us there's more here, and basically everyone agrees. So firstly, understand spiritual reality. Daniel 10-12, it gives us a glimpse behind the curtain. And the point is to strengthen God's people to stand, just as this man strengthened Daniel. But the way that he strengthens him, the particular way he does it, also strengthens us. Okay, because he's come to make Daniel understand, hasn't he? Verse 14, take a look. This man says, "Now I have come to explain to you what will happen to your people in the future, for the vision concerns a time yet to come." Or scan down to verse 19. He says, "Do not be afraid, you who are highly esteemed." He said, "Peace, be strong now, be strong." When he spoke to me, I was strengthened. I said, "Okay, speak, my Lord, since you've given me strength." He wants to understand what he's saying. And then verse 20. So he said to him, "Do you know why I've come to you? Soon I'll return to fight against the prince of Persia, and when I go, the prince of Greece will come. But first, I will tell you what is written in the book of truth." Okay? Daniel is being strengthened to do what? Well, to listen, to understand what this man's going to say. And here's what he says in chapter 11. Okay? Understand spiritual reality, and then secondly, understand appointed history. And we didn't have time to read the whole of chapter 11, though. Let me just really encourage you, go home and read it. It's amazing. And what you'll find as you read through chapter 11 is a very, very detailed, chaotic account of two kings, okay? And God's people basically stuck in the middle. Now, Daniel, he's already been told that this is about the prince of Greece. This is about Greece coming, the Greek kingdom. And then in chapter 11, he's given a blow-by-blow account of basically one king, followed by four kings, and then two of these kings, which is what most of chapter 11 is about, go back and forth in this great war, okay? One is the king of the north, one's the king of the south. And each time they march up and down to fight each other, Jerusalem, God's people, are stuck in the middle. And each invading king demands allegiance as they come through. And if God's people remain faithful to their God, rather than turning to this king, well, it's going to be brutal for them. And look, you're on the stage, okay? You've been told you're going to be in a fight. And then you see the script. And it turns out you're not even the main player in the fight. You're just going to get beaten up by passing thugs back and forth, back and forth. And so you start to wonder, you think, I don't know if I like this. I might just change the script a bit, right? As in, how about when this guy comes over, I'm just going to go, "Oh, yeah, no, I'm on your side. Yeah, great." And then I won't get beaten up. And then when he comes, I'll go, "Oh, no, I was wrong. I'm really sorry. I'm on your side now, okay?" You're going to change the script. Why wouldn't you? Sounds like a better part, doesn't it? Why would you stand faithful in the middle to someone else and just get beaten up repeatedly? Now remember, Daniel's people, God's people, they've been taken out of their land. They're currently exiles in Babylon. They've been waiting to go back for 70 years. In fact, at this point in Daniel, the first Israelites, they've started going back. But what Daniel sees is that this glorious return that's begun, that they've been longing for 70 years, it's not going to be all that they hoped. They just escaped the Babylonians and the Persians back to Israel, but they're about to get smashed by the Greeks. It must have felt like chaos for them, right? How utterly discouraging. 70 years. No wonder Daniel's mourning and seeking understanding for these 3 weeks. What's going on, God? Why should we stick with you? We've just gone back. And perhaps all of history still feels like that. We're Christians, but leader after leader comes in our world, in our country. Cultural moment after cultural moment kind of washes through our land. But the tide, it feels, just remains firmly set against Christians who hold to the Bible. And it's not just here, as we were saying, it's all around the world, isn't it? Christians struggle and suffer. A dictator that's been brutal against Christian gets replaced by a regime that are even worse. A corrupt government that failed to protect Christians is toppled and replaced by people who actually hated the Christians in the first place. You could go on the Open Doors website and find it happening again and again all around the world. Why stick with God? Why remain faithful to Him? Why not just change the script a bit and avoid the suffering? It could feel like Christians are prey to the random chaos of the world that wars and burns and kills. But that is not true. That is not reality in Daniel. Daniel's given understanding. And he's told in advance all the very, very specific details of exactly what's going to happen. What's the point? Why is it so long, chapter 11? Why so much detail? Well, it's all been planned out, hasn't it? It's not chaos. It's appointed history. Look at chapter 11, verse 27, okay? The two kings, these two warring kings, with their hearts bent on evil, they'll sit at the same table at some point and they'll lie to each other, but to no avail, because an end will still come at the appointed time. Or verse 29, at the appointed time, he will invade the south again. Or verse 33, okay? Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. But look down to verse 35. Some of the wise will stumble, so they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end. For it will still come at the appointed time. Okay, do we get it? In this play that we're in, we get given a script and told we're going to be trampled on. It's scripted. It's appointed. It looks like chaos, but it's not. It's all appointed by God, and so therefore is the end of everything. And did you notice the focus on the end in those verses we just read? The end will come at the appointed time. It looks like chaos, but it's not. It looks endless, but it's not. It's limited. It's determined by God. So don't give up. Don't give up. Let's just think about how that worked out practically for Daniel's generation. Okay, verse 29. Let's take a look and work through it. We're just focusing in on kind of a particular moment in that history that gets kind of written about. Daniel hears about a time that the king of the north is going to come and try and invade the king of the south. But at this point, ships from the west are going to come in and stop him. Okay, and then verse 30. The king of the north will turn back and vent his fury against the holy covenant. He'll return and show favor to those who forsake the holy covenant. His armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress, and he will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. With flattery, he will corrupt those who've been violating the covenant. But with the people who know their God will firmly resist him. Hey, look, almost everyone agrees what chapter 11 is actually describing in history, okay? It's describing the four-part warring of the Greek kingdom after Alexander the Great has come and gone, okay? And you've got two big kings in this. You've got Ptolemy and his sons, who live down in the south. They all get called Ptolemy as well. And then you've got Seleucus and his sons, who are in the north, in Persia. And some of his sons get called either Seleucus or Antiochus, okay? These are the two kings. Kings of the north, kings of the south. And verse 29 to 35, they describe a moment where Antiochus IV attempted to come down and conquer Egypt. Except Rome turned up in ships at this point on the western coast. And they jump out on the sand, and there's this great moment in history where the Roman ruler, he draws a circle around Antiochus on the sand. He says, step outside that line, Step out of line, and you have to give me an answer, whether we're going to fight or whether you're going home. Okay? This is where the phrase step out of line comes from. Antiochus at this moment, he decides, right, I can't win this fight. I've got to go back home. He's humiliated. And so he goes back home via Jerusalem. And he vents his fury. Okay? He captured the city. He desecrates the temple. He ends the worship of God there. He goes and sacrifices pigs on the altar. He institutes Greek governance and says, you may not keep the law of God. Those who refuse are going to get killed. See, Daniel's being told all of this in chapter 11. Doesn't get told the names of the guys, but he's told this is exactly what God's people will face. It feels like godless chaos. But if they were going to stand, they needed to understand. All history, even this history, this awful history, is appointed by God. God still rules and is limited by God. There is an end. So don't give up on your God. Stand firm. In fact, in God's appointment, all this suffering, it's going to achieve something for God's people, isn't it? Did you see that in verse 35? Some of the wise, that's those who understand, they will stumble, so they may be refined, purified, and made spotless until the time of the end. For it will still come at the appointed time. You see, the longer that God's people suffer for their faithfulness to God, well, all that really happens is they prove their faithfulness to God. It becomes clearer and clearer. They're refined. They're clearly the pure people of God. Are they going to fold on him, flip the script, or are they going to remain faithful? See, under heat and pressure, God's people are proved. Our world feels like chaos sometimes, doesn't it? It's going to be difficult for God's people to remain faithful to him. If that's all that you understand about history, well, probably the best you can hope for is actually to just change your situation. Okay, change roles in the play, join whichever side is going to make your life easiest. Compromise in your faith with God if that's all you understand. But if we understand that this chaos and this difficulty is in our God's hands, it proves that we belong to him. And it will end. Well, we're going to stand. Even in the furnace, all the way to the end. So if we want to stand, understand spiritual reality, sneak a look behind the curtain, see there's more going on, we're on the side of our God in a cosmic battle, and then understand appointed history. Realize it's all been scripted to prove whose side we're on before the end, and then understand imminent eternity. If the end of the play is the end, and nothing comes after, well, why not change the script? I mean, it's all you're going to get. So what if you're on God's side in the play? It doesn't really matter. Just do whatever you can to enjoy life, and certainly avoid suffering, right? Now look with me at chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Michael, the great prince who protects your people, will arise. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. But at that time, your people, everyone whose name is found in the book, will be delivered. Multitudes who sleep in the dust of the earth will awake. Some to everlasting life, others to shame and everlasting contempt. Daniel's told there will be a time of distress, but death is not the end. Those who die will rise. And there are only two outcomes on that day: everlasting life or everlasting contempt. Now, what will everlasting life be like? Verse 3. Those who are wise will shine like the brightness of the heavens, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Okay, shining like the brightness of the heavens, it's a picture of life with God, shining with brightness because you've been in his presence. Think Moses, if you remember that, okay? Shining like the stars forever. It's the language of belonging to God, being one of his numbered people. Think Abraham, if you remember that. Do not be afraid, Daniel, you who are highly esteemed, you who are loved. Peace. Be strong now. Be strong. But for those who do not remain faithful to God, there is everlasting contempt. And Jesus is the one who actually warned most clearly about this. In Matthew's Gospel, we read Jesus describing the end of all things, the same end being described here. He says this, he says, the Son of Man on that day will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil. They will throw them into a blazing furnace where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Did you hear the quote from Daniel right at the end of that? They will shine like the sun. He's describing the same day Daniel's describing. He's warning those who turn back from God, what the Bible calls sin. He's warning them, turn back now, because the end is awful for those who reject him. And it goes on forever. The point is exactly that, isn't it? The end is eternal. Jesus said so. And then Jesus proved it. Because he died, and he came back to life, never to die again. You see, if you are convinced, like I am, that there is a real historical man called Jesus who lived and died and rose from the dead, well, that changes everything. Because the end is eternal. You see, it means that life isn't everything. There's a bigger reality. And at the end of this life, on the stage of this history, well, actually, that's just the beginning of true life that goes on forever and ever. The end is eternal, and it's also imminent. It's soon. In Daniel's vision, two others appear at this point. They cry out to the man in linen. They say, how long will it be before these astonishing things are fulfilled? Okay, it's the cry of God's people around the world and down the centuries who are suffering. How long, Lord? How long? We see the spiritual reality, we get it. We see that history is appointed, we get it. We understand that the end is eternal, we get it. But how long? Verse 7. The man clothed in linen, who was above the waters of the river, lifted his right hand and his left towards heaven, and I heard him swear by him who lives forever, saying, it will be for time, times, and half a time. When the power of that holy people has been finally broken, all these things will be completed. Look, we could talk about this more over coffee, but time, times, and half a time, okay, it's the Daniel way of saying 3.5. Okay, time, 1 time, times, 2 time, half a time. 3.5. Or half a 7. Back in Daniel 9, God revealed to Daniel that there would be 77s before the end. And that final 7 will get broken in half. Okay, do you get the idea? So how long, Lord, before the end? 3.5. Half a 7. You're almost there. That's the idea, isn't it? You're almost there. How long, Lord? Half a second. I'll be there in half a second. Okay? We know it's not a literal second, but we get the idea. It's next. The end is very nearly here, and it is eternal. Half a second. So in this play, stand. Stand under great opposition. Stand until the end. You're almost there. If you understand that, you'll stand. And with that, Daniel's given all the understanding he needs. He doesn't understand everything. In verse 8, he says, what will be the outcome of this? He's not told. But he understands enough. He's glimpsed behind the curtain. He's seen that history has been appointed. Verse 10, many will be purified, made spotless and refined, but the wicked will continue to be wicked. None of the wicked will understand. but those who are wise will understand. Okay, for Daniel's generation, the Greeks are coming, but he's seen that eternity is imminent. Verse 11, from that time that the daily sacrifice is abolished, that's when the Greeks come, and the abomination that causes desolation is set up, there'll be 1,290 days. Do some maths, that's 3.5 years. Blessed is the one who waits for the end and reaches the 1,335 days. Do the maths, that's 3.5 years and just a little bit. I.e., that's the beginning of eternity, the beginning of what comes after the end. Blessed is the one who makes it. Daniel understands. So verse 13 of Daniel 12 brings it all to an end. As for you, Daniel, go your way till the end. Now, Daniel's a really old man by now, by the way. He's still in Babylon. He never did make it back to the land, I don't think. He had a bit of land that was his there, a home that he'd been longing for. He never got there. This faithful man of God, who's lived through kings and chains, who's lived through exile and people lying about him, and lions' dens and royal courts, always faithful to his God, what does he get in the end for everything that he's been through and everything that he's done? For all his faithfulness, what does he get? Well, in this life, he gets a grave in a foreign land. That's it. And the knowledge that after he died, there will be more kings, and there will be more chains, and it will be awful for God's people. And yet he remained faithful, because he understands. Verse 13 again. Daniel, you will rest, and then at the end of days you will rise to receive your allotted inheritance. Now there are kings, now there are chains, now we play our part, and some of us will suffer, and some of us around the world will die for Jesus. But we do it because behind the curtain there is a bigger reality. There is our God. There is his King Jesus, who rose from the dead and is seated on the throne above everything. And if we stand, we will rise to shine like stars with him. On that day, there will be only one king. There will be no more suffering. And there will be crowns for all of God's people who played their part and stood faithful to the end. So what now? Well, stand, because we understand. Perhaps for the first time, join the ranks of those willing to stand with Jesus. And as we stand, we don't stand still. No, you see, we've been given a task to do. Did you notice that in these chapters? What do those who understand do? What do we do if we're wise? Have a look, 11:33. Those who are wise will instruct many, though for a time they will fall by the sword or be burned or captured or plundered. 12 verse 3. Those who lead many to righteousness shine like the stars forever and ever. If we understand, we will make others understand. How could we not, given all that we know? See, Daniel chapters 10 to 12 is written for God's people in Babylon. But it was for the whole world. It was for those willing to come to God's people, hear God's word like Daniel does, and understand. Do you know when it feels most to me like the tide of being a Christian is just set against me? It's when we try and tell people about God. And we say, you know what, there's a God and he's a judge. It's when we try and speak about eternity as if that's real, and we're going to spend life after death with a God who loves us. It's when we call people to suffer and we say, become a Christian is wonderful, but it's going to be hard. See, kings and kingdoms will wage war for that not to be true. They do not want there to be a king seated on the throne. Regimes will rampage and they will stamp out talk about Jesus, God's eternal king and judge. That is the fight we are in. Do we understand? If we do, as we stand, we will not remain silent. We will lead our friends and our neighbors to the only God who stands behind the curtain of history, to Jesus who is seated on the throne above all appointed history, and we will beg them to turn to him while our God patiently holds off the eternal end. Now there are kings. Now there are chains. On that day, there is only one king, and there will be crowns for all of those who understand. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, we praise you and we thank you that you have revealed yourself to us, that you've shown us history, you've shown us reality this morning in your words. Father, take the words that you've spoken to us and please give us understanding. Drive these words down deep into our minds and our hearts, that we might be those who understand the world we live in so clearly that we cannot do anything but stand. And please, Father, through us, show your mercy to more and more, that on that day there might be millions and billions praising the Lord Jesus, your King, our God. Amen.